I hope it works. There you go. Because sometimes it'll record for you, not for me, because you're the original host. So,
Okay,
okay.
we'll get it either way.
Okay.
Hi, Sue.
Okay. So yes, so it should be in here. You can print these off on your own at some
Yep.
point. Just click on it. And I that is where I am not exactly 100% sure how that works because it's my stuff, so I don't need to print it.
Right.
But these are some of the exercises we're going to be working today. And I put up a ton, not because I expect to do them all today, but I understand how important it is to scaffold information into our brain. And we're going to start off by taking a look at one of the most standard sheets that we have. Oh, yes, and just asking again, anybody with any questions? Because looks like we're still missing somebody here.
No, we're not. Actually, Jen is not here with us this week.
Okay, good. So anybody have any questions from last week that we want to take? Any questions? No? Yes? Maybe? No? Okay. Then I shall pin myself and begin what I was going to chat about. All right. So I wanted to talk about four-way coordination as a skill set that we build upon. Now, four-way coordination, everybody is like, well, I must have it. I must do this for drumming. And correct, you do. You need to have right-hand coordination and left-hand coordination. And then you're going to add those feet in. What is important about building coordination is if you haven't memorized patterns, you're going to have a very difficult time with scaffolding and building up that four-way coordination. So the very first thing that I recommend people do is go to this lovely page in your Stone Stick Control book. So if you have ever heard of Stone Stick Control, it is like a Bible for drummers. We play this book, and I've done workshops on just how to use this book in different ways because everybody stays on page 5 for a millennia, and then they're like, oh, look, there's rolls on this page, and there are flams on this page, and there are combinations on this page, and it's a wonderful book. But it only deals with hands because George Clarence Stone was a military drummer, and we're talking like Civil War drummer, and or not Civil War, Second World War, or First World War era, and taking all of those traditions and bringing them into a book of like, how do we train these hands and how do you do this? So it's all based off of that traditional drumming. Now, when I came into this as a drum set player, I was like, well, this is fantastic, but it's also very boring. So how do I make this into something a little bit more interesting? So I started adding foot ostinati in. So an ostinato is a repetitive set of notes. So in this case, I would add bass drum in, and then I would add hi-hat. Now you can see by my beautiful scribbles how legible this was. But what we would do is we first would need to start with our hands. So learning just number one is just right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And you know, this is simple enough. But the next step on that is like, okay, well, how do I create this into something more interesting and up-level it? And the first thing I did was just add my bass drum, that right foot. And as you get to know it, it's instead of playing it in cut time, I'm playing it in 4/4. So I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And once I added that in, I decided that I was going to then add a left foot hi-hat in. So the foot pattern, which is repetitive, is alone, together, alone, together, alone, together, going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. But none of that would be possible if I had not memorized right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. So that's really the first step, is you have to have patterns memorized, patterns in your hands, or it's going to be impossible to scaffold and build on top of it. But it's not completely impossible because a lot of us can read. And if you are a happy reader, then something like this, visually giving you those same exercises with the visual underneath it in a clear manner. So these are literally the first 10 or 12 patterns of Stone Stick Control, and what I've done is added in the foot patterns. Now I have 3 main ostinato patterns that I play with Stone Stick Control. The first one is just the quarter note pattern with with the bass drum on 1, 2, 3, 4, adding 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, 1 and 2 and then adding the hands in, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And if you keep going, number 2 starting on the left hand, left, right, you just keep those feet going. So something has to be on autopilot. In this case, it's my feet. You don't even need a drum set to do this. You can do this sitting at an office chair and just going right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left with your hands on your lap. So the second pattern that I have added to this is a little further down, and it's the samba foot pattern. And the samba foot pattern, again, you have to turn it into autopilot. So if you don't already have this into your body and you don't have anything else memorized, this will become a much more challenging thing to do. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's number 7, the samba feet. And the hands are back on autopilot because I already know how to do right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. So as we're doing this, you want to line everything up so that your feet and your hands all line up. And you can go the slow route of going right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. But saying the pattern is going to be really challenging because you're saying something, but your feet are doing something else. So I highly recommend when you're looking at patterns to work with that you get those going and count them in the eighth notes. So if you're doing double strokes going right, right, left, left, once you start that pattern, we need to go into autopilot, going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and then add your feet in, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So what we're going to be doing is looking at your body part that you're going to be adding in. And you can also do this in a scaffolded way. So this is one of the first ways that I do this. The third pattern that I do, because it's a very common pattern, is the bio feet. So these are 3 really common patterns that we use for Latin percussion. So the samba feet, and then the bio feet, which is 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. So before you can put any of those into autopilot, you have to memorize those patterns with your body, right? The only way that we can create that coordination is by memorizing each part individually. So that was the first sort of mental note that we need to make, is how do we do that? So the first thing you want to do is memorize the simpler one, which is the hands. If you're visually really good at reading, having these written out will really just up that level. And then the next thing to do is, once you have it going, to speed it up. But what we're going to do is we're going to break it down even further. We're going to go backwards a little bit and talk about this on a body percussion level, and also in a way where I highly recommend that you switch out how you approach a simple pattern. So the first thing is, even without your drum set, I've written it for drum set, but also for body percussion. But you need to start with something, and whatever pattern you're starting with, you need to get that onto automatic pilot. So if we look at I call it the body percussion exercise, and it's just starting by patting your right hand, unless you're a left-hand player. If you're a left-hand player, then start patting those eighth notes with your left hand. But getting those eighth notes going and counting them aloud, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the next step is going to be, where do the next things show up? Well, your bass drum is on all the numbers. Your right foot is on all those numbers. So you're going to go slowly and go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So on your drum set, because it's easier to hear that, we're going 1 and 2 and starting with the right hand, 1, 2, and then look at your foot and tell it, just say, right foot, play the numbers please. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now the next step is going to be adding 2 and 4 to your snare drum. So you have to keep that counting going. This is how we organize our brain, by giving it a number designation. So look at your left hand and tell it 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So far we have 3 elements and 3 different ostinati going on. Okay, now if you're going to be doing this on your drum set, you cannot start on the hi-hat. If you're going to be closing the hi-hat, so you would go to the ride cymbal. And if you're just doing it on your body percussion, then it doesn't matter, because you can do this away at your desk or on a bus on the way home. It all works together. Or with a class of students, you can all sit on benches and be in a seated position, or turn in your desk chair so that you have the ability to hit those body parts together. But again, we start with that counting. 4 and 1 and 2. Look at your right foot for the bass drum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then I add the snare drum. 2, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Then we add that left part, which is on 2 and 4, which actually matches your left hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now you have all 4 body parts working in concert, each one with its own pattern. So another way you can look at it is changing which body coordination you start with. So you can start number 2 with, instead of starting with the right hand, you can start by counting with your foot. And making sure that you're counting those subdivisions, going 1 and 2 and, because we're going to scaffold it again. This foot knows what it's doing now once you've repeated it enough. So we're going to talk about now looking over at your left foot, getting those 2 and 4, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Now for playing hi-hat, it's helpful to open in time. So opening on the and before you play is helpful when you're doing exercises like this, although you wouldn't necessarily do that when you're actually playing a groove, but you might. Okay, so we've got those 2 feet working together and subdividing 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and adding that right hand, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. Now what do we have left? You have that left hand. It matches your left foot, which actually makes it a little easier. On the 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 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 and 4 and. Now I've just randomly selected patterns that are patterns that you can build with, and you can start on any of the patterns that you really want to. You don't need to start one way. You can find a way that works better for your body. As we change out the patterns, you can change which part you start with, if you're only going to start with the bass drum, or if you want to start with the feet. In this case, I would call this the walking feet. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And even in saying it that way, you're still subdividing those 8th notes, going right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Adding right and 2 and 3 and 4 and keeping that right hand going. Add the snare on 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So are there any questions on this so far? Do you see how we're changing the order of the scaffolding? So if you do it only one way, then you're going to have to start that way every time. But if we do a focus practice where we're using the same pattern but changing the order, you're going to give your brain an interesting, you're going to give it different ways to wire to the same event, which is really what we want to do. That's considered like a focused practice. If you're practicing violin or if you're practicing piano, you want to practice in a specific order, very focused, to make sure that you're accurately playing the notes. And with percussion, when you're adding extra parts, you want to do it accurately and slowly to get each part right. But you also want to create an interdependent relationship. If you're always starting with your right hand, your brain will always expect to start with the right hand. If you're always starting with the right foot, your body will always expect to start with the right foot. And this is why some of those stone stick control patterns are so important to learn, because you're learning more than just one pattern with your feet. You're learning more than just one way. And it just creates these really fascinating synaptic leaps and connections. So if we look at number 4, this time we've decided to start a different pattern. Just counting again. By having the counting, you are giving the organization to your brain as to what's going to happen with the rhythm. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then this one, number 4, I decided to add right hand next. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's the same as the above pattern. Oh, I should make it more visible. Make the above pattern a little more visible. There we go. So it's the same pattern as above, just a different approach to the hi-hat. So your bass then snare is still that walking thing, going right foot, left hand, right foot, left hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We can take the same pattern and just add the bass drum first. So if you take number 4 and just add the bass drum, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we're starting with the left foot, adding the right foot together, alone, together, alone, together, alone. If you want to me, adding the hi-hat with the subdivisions is much more natural than adding the snare drum first. And that just tells me what I've practiced. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, further down on these pages, I've given different grooves. Bass and snare and bass, bass, snare. And I forgot to add the snare drum on this one. Like I said, we didn't add all of the parts, but hey, I tried. So now I know what I have to correct for you guys. Number 7, I tried a completely different approach of just doing bass and snare. And this is more challenging. So number 7, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now that subdivision gives me a place to add my right hand. And 3. It's playing all those subdivisions. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Looking at that right hand to give your visual to see what you're adding. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. Looking to my left foot now to add the quarter notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's how we've added scaffolding in different directions. And of course, this one is definitely harder to do when you start with the hand and the foot, and then you add the next layers in. But we're also teaching your brain, again, different pathways to the same result, which means you have more flexibility coming into that. You're going to have more flexibility. So what I've added to the bottom page is just to mix and match what you start with. These ones start with the right hand, and then I've given a series at the bottom of different hand patterns and foot patterns. So what you would do is make up your own pattern for your bass drum and your snare drum. If you want to keep it simple, but you have to create an ostinato of something that is consistently playing, and you need to memorize that ostinato that you're consistently playing. So thinking about if I'm going to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and eighth notes are really easy with our right hand if you've been drumming for a while. It's so natural to just do those eighth notes. Not so easy are quarter notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you can keep that pattern going and just add your hi-hat foot pattern of choice. So in this case, why don't we do A1? So your right hand pattern is A. Your foot pattern is A1, which are the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're going to choose what your groove pattern would be between your right foot and your left hand. So you've got to get that going and just keep it going and learn that pattern together. Then add your foot. So your bass and snare and bass and snare. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I hope you guys are trying these along with me. Yeah? So it becomes a pick and choose. Now these are the patterns that are very common that we will play on our drum set, and that's why I've put them on. D, E, and F are D, E, F, and G. Ooh, not that G. My G wrote out wrong. D, E, F are definitely advanced patterns. So they're going to, if you want to create the ostinato out of this, you have to get used to playing the new pattern. If you don't know the patterns, you can't bring them into your playing. It's a very simple principle, but if you don't know what the patterns are or how they work, it's going to be more challenging to bring them into your playing. So one of the things you can do is what I had been doing, which is just keep everything else simple. So now I'm going to play the B pattern with my right hand, which is the common one that we know. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Then C is all the 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a D and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 2 and a 3 and a 4, and then we go to E. Ready? Here we go. And a 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and. Now we're going to do F. Here we go. And 1 E, a 2 E, a 3 E, a 4 E, a 1 E, a 2 E, a 3 E, a 4 E, a 1 E, a 2 E, a 3 E, a 4 E, a 1 E, a 2 E, a 3 E, a 4 E. Now G was supposed to be every time. Somehow my program put it to the bass drum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and is where we're going to try to go with that. So all of those are advanced patterns to move beyond just playing, I'm playing eighth notes with everything I do, which is fine, but it can get boring. So why not try patterns along with the grooves that you know? So that brings me to the next principles down here, which are your left foot pattern. So the common left foot patterns that you're going to see, A1 is so useful playing quarter notes. This could become a rhythmic anchor, and this was like, people have sort of like game-changing moments in their drumming career and their drumming journey, and this is definitely one that was huge for me, was learning to use my left hand or my left foot as an anchor, because my hands were strong, my right foot was pretty decent, but my left foot was just kind of lost and sitting there all limp and not doing very much except for those opening and closing things. And so I'm learning how to use that as an anchor by playing patterns. And you can even, again, you can go back to that tool of doing just stone stick control like this with all all left foot patterns, right? So for example, if we're doing a more challenging one, because paradiddles are a favorite, you have two ways you can do this in the stick control. You can play it as 16th notes, which is the way it was written, going paradiddle, paradiddle. That's number 5 in case you're looking for it. Paradiddle, paradiddle. Or you can be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and having that pattern anchored with your left foot. And remember, we did that groove last time, and then adding that bass drum. And if we were to do it as 16th notes, it would be twice as fast, going. And my anchor is helping to keep me steady. So it's like doing a left foot study. You're going to literally need to bring this into your practice, because your left foot will tend to be the ignored one. And so using these types of exercises on things that you already know. So this is really what's important, is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take a couple of other examples here, which I really like. Joel Rothman has this one page that I use all the time. It's like basically all the basic rock beats that you could imagine, just the basic rocks all the way through. And what you can do is take whichever rock beat you're working on right now. So let's say you're working on, let's pick one. Who wants to pick one here? So let's do boom, chick, boom, 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 chick. So we're going to start with that. So first you have to make sure number 9 is memorized. So we're going to go get those hands going. With this page, the ostinato is your hands. This never changes. 1 and 2 and 90% of the rock stuff you play is going to have this anchor going on. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, so far so good, but let's move that over to the right, onto the ride. 1 and 2, and we're going to keep this going with that anchor. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Change your focus to that left foot. And now we're going to change that to 2 and 4. 1 and 2, and add that bass drum back in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I've changed that left foot pattern. I'll just play quieter so you can hear it better. All right. Now another pattern. All the 8th notes. This is a busy pattern. Doesn't always work, but great. So now we're going to go to the upbeats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And we can scaffold it going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2.
We have a question, Celine?
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, Celine, I'm just confused on this one. So your hi-hat, like you're talking about your left foot, where is the hi-hat on the page that you're showing?
It's not.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you lost me a little bit on that one. So you're using the other exercise combined with this one, is that right?
Exactly. Because I don't have
Okay.
any grooves written out. Because this can be so personal to mix and match, what is it that you're working on, and what exactly skills are we trying to bring in, right? So
Okay.
where right now, if I'm looking at just the hi-hat pattern, closing pattern, you can pick any rock groove you're familiar with. This is why I'm saying you can scaffold for way coordination. It's like you're sneaking in your fiber and your vegetables by adding extra extra power on your left foot. So that groove that I was playing, because I didn't have it written out, even if we just start with a basic groove, or bass, snare, bass, snare, and then you can focus on those 1A, B1, B1, A1, B1, C1, and D1. I didn't have any more brilliant ways to make that look right. So if we're starting with the first one, then that's what we're working on, having that 1 and 2. And all the focus is on that left foot. Just move that to the rim so you can hear that hi-hat. Now to B1. So you have to look at your left foot. Focus your brain and your hearing in that direction. It will really help. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. All right, let's go to C1. Then we're going to go to the upbeats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you see how that works. I've taken whatever it is that you're working on. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a really challenging groove. In fact, if you're trying to bring in your hi-hat when you haven't really done that before, then you're going to need to start with the tools you already have. You cannot plant a garden without having the seeds and the soil and the water and, of course, sunshine. You can try planting it before spring is ready, and you don't end up with what you need because you just don't have the nutrients. You don't have the ingredients. You have to put those all together. Okay. Any other questions, Andrea? Did that answer your question? Yeah? That's good? Okay. So the next thing that I was doing is, again, we're scaffolding skills one on top of the other. And how I was talking about this is we need to learn how to also move our bass drum. So at first, if you are working in the beginning and you have not yet learned how to independently move your bass drum, this will be step 1. Figure out how to move that bass drum. The second page that I put is with the counting and the left foot hi-hat. I just didn't want it to look too busy if you haven't already done the preliminary work of just learning to move your bass drum. So in this case, the ostinato is, again, right hand playing 8th notes, left hand playing 2 and 4, and we just move over by 1/8 note each and every a couple of bars. So you can, whenever you do an exercise like this, you do it until you have it, right? Don't change until you really have it and you're counting it out. So the first one is 1 and 2 and 3. That's it. Just beat 1. And again, something has to be on automatic. So you can forget about those hands. They already know what to do. So now we're going to the end of 1, 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So what's next is beat 2 and 2. Then we go to beat 2, which is 1 and 2, and make sure it's all together. 1 together. Not a flam. 1, 2. All right. And then we go to the end of 2. 2 and 1 and 2 and. All right. 1 and 2. And then we're going to add the next level. So once you've completed your page of going all the way through the 8th notes to the end of 4, boop, that's all I've done. I'm moving it over by 1/8 note. We've got that going on. No problem. Now we're going to move it over because it's less ringy on my rim. We will go to the bass drum with the left foot hi-hat. So this pattern I've selected is just keeping it simple. I've done the 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've also just done 2 and 4. Those two are very common when you're playing blues shuffles and things like that. It's often on 2 and 4. And if you're playing rock and roll and you're trying to do fills, it's quite helpful to have this happening, quarter notes. So again, we have to establish your ostinato. So making sure that you feel really confident getting that left foot going and those eighth notes counting. Going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then adding your 2 and 4. And remembering that your right foot is what moves things. So coming back to this, we're going to imagine it's on the ride, but I want you to hear that hi-hat. Then your bass drum moving, here we go, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now another thing you can pay attention to is the quality of your squish. Because if you're getting this going on with your hi-hat, you have to decide what kind of quality you want. So if you want it to be really tight, you're going to need to do a tighter squash. And I'll just for a moment stop screen sharing to give you a quick overview of this left foot. Ooh, my table is slightly in the way. Okay, so this left foot, to get a good squash, this is always dangerous with all of the things on it. To do a good left foot squash, let's see, you still can't see it. Oh my goodness. Let us, there we go. Usually I just bring down my computer, but that's not possible today. All right, so what you're going to do is think about how you are squishing your hi-hat, and you also want to double check your hi-hat itself. Quite often people don't have these bolts tightened enough. It's good to have a little bit of play, but quite often the hi-hat, if it's too loose, you're not going to get a good crunch sound. So if you're playing anything jazzy, you're going to want a solid crunch sound. And then you don't want to be too far apart. But to get a good squashed, crunchy sound, I use my entire weight of my leg forward and going toward the toe. Just lifting and drop the entire foot. So when I'm doing eighth notes, I'm actually balancing on my hip a little bit to do that. Because if I leave my heel down and you don't quite squish enough, you might find that the quality isn't quite what you want for your squish. But for 2 and 4, you can also rock your foot, having your 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's another way of scaffolding that change. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and using your body to help you get that going, or else up and down from here to get a stronger sound. Thinking about putting the pressure towards your toe, so you have to sit with your abs nice and tight, and your back usually needs to be supported by your abs. So we're not doing this wobbly side to side. You have to use your hip flexors and your balance to get that going. Is that helpful? I'm sure that's helpful. I'll just pretend everybody's nodding because I can't really see. Okay, awesome. Okay, so far what we've talked about is memorizing of the patterns, memorizing of which pattern you're going to use for each of the body parts. Where are you going to move with this? And it's almost impossible to add that extra pattern in if you don't already have some sort of established memorized pattern. If you're not memorized, if it's not memorized for you, it's going to be challenging, because how do you add something new when you're still learning the other part? So that's one of the important things to consider here. So the next sheet I have up here for everyone was the opposite body part, which was doing the snare grid. And this is my spelling error. Establish. Well, it made sense when I wrote it. Establish the ostinato. So I shall establish my right hand and my right foot, and then I'm adding the snare drum in. The same thing goes for these patterns. I just picked some just a very simple 4 on the floor, and then 1 and 3 on bass drum, and then that's the pattern of moving your snare drum over. So again, when you're moving something, you establish your ostinato first, then you do the moving part. And do not move on. If you can't get beat the end of one, stay there, count it, go slowly, count through it, and get the end of one. So the first one was on bass drum. The second one here is on snare drum. And this is the other sheet to establish the ostinato with your foot. Then it's moving that left hand over by an 8th note each time. You can also do this with 16th note patterns, but this is just the first step of the scaffolding of that. And then this one was having bass on 1 and 3. And then I have, again, the most used hi-hat patterns for that left foot. Again, you have to train it. If you don't have your left foot trained to just do quarter notes, to do beats 2 and 4, to do all of the 8th notes, and to do the upbeats, then you have to train this first. You have to get that into your body. And so what I was recommending before was using like a page that you know or a rhythm that you really know and adding that in. So there's one more page that I have put on here, which is a little complicated if you're not sure what you're looking at. And it again is using patterns to establish an ostinato. So in this case, there are 2 different parts. There is the cymbal patterns, which are labeled A, B, C, D, E, F. And then there's the snare drum, bass drum part. So one thing I've learned is that 8th notes are easy. We are used to playing 8th notes. Playing quarter notes, 16th notes, and variations of the 16th notes are not so easy because they are not what we've practiced the most. And it's very much about adding in some interesting patterns. This one is also, again, one of those game changers where I didn't realize how well this trained the brain and the body until I started using it myself and with my students. This feels more like playing heavy metal than anything else. And so what we would do is you take pattern A and you would take number 1. So I've written it down here for everybody to be able to see this. So I have pattern 1, which is quarter notes. And then I have that kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare pattern. So in this case, what I always start with is the kick, snare pattern because it's what is going to stay the same. So the ostinato on this one, that makes it a little more tricky, is then we're training in 16th notes, going 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So you need to start there. Then the next one was adding the cymbal pattern. So cymbal pattern A is first. So 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Looking at your hand. So now your right hand is the changing thing, not the one that's staying the same. The second pattern's much easier because your bass drum and hi-hat are both doing 8th notes. And a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Then we go to the 16th note pattern. Are you ready for the challenge of D? The challenge of D, I put a dash where the space is because quite often people get mixed up as to which rhythm means what in the 16th note pattern. So I have 1, E is a lift. I lift on it, so I'm consciously doing something. So 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4 and a. Now, this takes forever to learn. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now I'm going to be doing bass and snare pattern 1 still and moving to E. And that's 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. The and is missing. Ah, so much fun. So 1E and a 2E and a, then we add that right hand. 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4E, a 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4E. Okay, now we're going to add the next one, which is F, which is 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E. So 1 is going to be alone in each of those last 3 patterns. 2E and a. So in this case, it's the a. 2E and a F. Here we go. And 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 2E and 3E and 4E and. These exercises are not going to make you musical. They are technical. Okay, so this is the technical side of learning to move your beats around with your right hand. Now the next grown-up step.
Celine, could you just do that last one slowly for me?
Okay,
slow it down a bit.
Here, Cindy, I'll move it down here too, because it's actually. Hang on, I'm going to bring this higher in the.
And it'd be great, actually. I know
Want me to start here?
you want to see. I'd like to see a full screen of you, but it's hard, a little hard for me to.
Okay,
But
give
go
me-
ahead, yeah.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to see. Ooh, I'm wondering. Give me a sec here. I was trying to see if there was a way to get my back, like to get me bigger. So first I'll show you this whole pattern, and then I will bring it to my body, okay? Did that work?
That sounds great.
I'll play the whole pattern and I'll repeat each one for a bar. This big person step is adding that left foot in. I just put it on beats 1, 2, 3, 4 to start. So if we're gonna do it on all of them, you have to put your right hand to your ride, and then you have to get this going. So we have, starting with quarter notes. So I always start with this, 2E and a 3E and a 4E, and that's my ostinato. And then I focus on get that going. 4E and a 1E and a 2, then starting the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1E and a 2E and here I go to the second one. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and 1 and a 2E and a 3. Now to 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and now to the next one. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2. Here we go to 1E, 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4E, a 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4E, F. So that's through the entire set of those patterns. Make sense? So
That's
the
great.
next, so here, I will show you the body view now, because we can't seem to, sometimes you're able to share it, and sometimes you just can't get it to work. I know that there's somebody in the world who knows how, but after 2 years of doing Zoom clinics and lessons, I'm happy that the sound and the screen sharing and the rest have started to work. Okay, so when we're working on, again, we think about scaffolding the different body parts. So that last page is a lot of notes, and it's intended that way because all the 16th notes help you to count in those subdivisions. And the pattern starts with this one, of course. Now, if you want to start with your pattern of quarter notes, you can, but you still need to subdivide to teach your brain where everything needs to go. 3E and 4E and 1E and up to 1E and so as you can tell, I did not practice it this way. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and eighth notes. 1E and 2E and 3. I always look at my hands when I'm about to change. Whatever's changing, I'll stare at intently. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and you can add in dynamics. So once you have the technical thing about it, then you can start to stretch it with your musicality. How do we make something like that musical? Why would I want to learn this pattern? Very good questions. Very, very good questions. So let's say you're playing and you are really, first of all, boredom is a big thing for drummers. Just so you know, we go into a gig and we're like, I laid down this 8th note pattern forever. Well, some of the things that we add on are with the things that make our grooves more tasty are here in our left hand. They're all the ghosting notes. I know you've probably heard about ghosting and how this works, but any of the patterns that we're learning and the things that we're scaffolding and the skills of this 4-way coordination, it all really pertains to how can we become more musical. So if you're learning a groove, and then you want to add some dynamics to your hi-hat. So instead of having it all here, all the same, you can start messing with that as a new level of dynamics. Strong and weak, playing your down beats. And now I want to turn it around. So I'm going and changes the feel entirely. Okay, well now let's try a different hi-hat pattern. This one doesn't feel right to me. Back to straight. Let's say you want to change your hi-hat or your snare drum. And just learning how to use each of these body parts independently and make choices consciously, whether it's a musical decision of downbeat, upbeat, whether it's a musical decision on how am I going to help myself keep time through a little fill, like so using that hi-hat as your anchor, or maybe you want to make it fancier. So just giving different variations of your hi-hat, different variations of your right hand ride, whether it's a downbeat or if it's playing on the ride or if it's giving an accent or if it's less accent, deciding what you want to do with that left foot and creating that freedom. So at first it feels like you're very anchored to exercises, but that's not the point of drumming. The point of drumming is not, well, it's good exercise, especially if you're sitting up tall and you're using your abs and you're using your upper body strength and you're using your legs. Yes, it's good exercise. But when it comes to a mental exercise, it's about learning how to move those over. How can I move it over? How can I change this groove? So I highly recommend taking the things that you already know and the grooves that you already know and just start changing one element that you can focus on. And you'll start to see where those weaknesses pop in. So weaknesses are not things that are like, oh, I feel so bad, I can't do it, I give up. And some days we'll feel like that, don't get me wrong. But the point is that we can do exercises in a way that you're like, okay, I have not practiced the in-between notes enough. So I'm not feeling a 16th note I'm not feeling those 16th notes, so I'm rushing my fills. So how can I help myself not rush through this fill? Well, adding that hi-hat anchor is helpful. Subdivisions in your head is helpful. How else is it helpful? Having the coordination skills in your body already to do those things. So are there any other questions? That hour flew by. So
Did fly by. So much info. It's great. I have the problem that for me personally, that when it's more complicated and there's more independence involved, I start my hi-hat. I start to follow my bass pattern, my foot pattern with this. And so I don't keep this steady and consistent. Got to work on that. Sue's nodding her head.
You know, one of the things that helps, okay, so is let's say you're playing something in your hi-hat and your bass drum is playing in between the notes. One of the things you can do is count with that hi-hat. Let that lift becomes a count. Instead of just going 1 and 2 and on a down motion, be 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and and making that a conscious thing, so then your brain can go, oh, my kick drum doesn't hit with the down, it hits with the up, like 1 2 1 E 2 E 3 E 4 E 1 that in between note will help you to, like, you can actually create that subdivision in your body. And I see Sue has a question.
Fantastic, Celine. Just I keep sort of going, oh. I noticed too that when things sort of start to get kind of busy, really breaking it down into the verbal counting, but also slowing down your hands. And so I get the metronome kind of out to kind of help me a little bit as well. And if I'm just really trying to, because I'll find, like Cindy was saying, you know, I'll start following kind of the predominant bass drum pattern, or if I'm doing something on the ride cymbal and I go, oh my God, like when I try to change it up, I'm realizing I don't know those basic patterns well enough to kind of know where it sounds appropriate to sort of change things. So I find I tend to kind of refer back to those, I guess, the weaknesses, you know, and we fall back to the things that we're most comfortable with. So it's really forcing yourself to kind of work through those things that we are weaker on, and be sort of a little hard ass on ourselves, you know, like just really take the time to do it. Cause it looks so easy for those who really, you can just sort of tell it's natural and you've got those patterns, but that's muscle memory, and you've just got it in there, pull it up. So,
and next week we're talking a bit more about that, because muscle memory is a non-fancy way of talking about your neural pathways, right? Like our muscles don't remember, our brain does, right? So it's really fascinating to think about that. And next week I love it if somebody, like, if you guys have something you're working on, I would love for you to send it to me on the Beatkeepers lesson page or PDF page. I put a little contact Celine thing so that you can email me your music for next week, because I would love to help you guys put together, like, I'll show you how to kind of program your learning and find those weaknesses and find what you need to learn in order to be successful at a song or successful at a piece. And what I've done is I've put in that area, I've just put a couple of snare drum pieces, because rudiments are important to learn. And then I put one rock song and how to sort of look at it. But if you have something specific you're working on that you want help with, or something that maybe you're not quite sure how to interpret, like, what does this mean? How does this work? Then definitely send it to me, because I would love to work together in finding ways to practice. And we're going to talk more next week about different methods of practice and different ways to, again, scaffold your practicing, just like we're scaffolding the different skill sets, right? Like, I don't expect somebody in my studio to spend their entire time learning exercises. I mean, that's just, it's not what music is. And if you want to be musical, you have to practice music, right? But the challenge is we have to get those skills into the body. So how are we getting the skills in the body? How do these patterns become more natural? How do we make that so that we can be more musical? That's the point. And if you sort of lose it, like what happens with a lot of people is they're like, oh, I don't feel motivated. I see this a lot on Drummer Girls United. I don't feel motivated. And we'll talk all about all of those things and how they work together. But this is really what it's all about is, okay, so we've talked about your rudiments. We've talked about four-way coordination. Next week, we're going to talk about here are the musical applications of all these things that we've been talking about. We're going to bring it all together. Give me your ideas. I love your ideas. Bring on your questions. They really help me to prepare what we need to prepare. And I will try to fix my grammatical errors in my music stuff because I hadn't looked at it on the big screen, just on the little screen. I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's incorrect English. And that's okay. But I hope that I've given you things to practice this week, things to work on, and bring me, like, this is a challenge. How do I work through this challenge? I would love to see that from you.
Well, I'm looking forward to next week, our final session. Yay, putting it all together. So thanks so much, Celine and everyone. And if you have any questions or other comments, feel free to reach out directly to Celine or through Beatkeepers and me.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Oh, this is fantastic. Man, oh man, I would love to see us actually. I mean, I don't know if anybody else would, but I mean, I would love to, you know, see this become sort of something that maybe we could offer, you know, depending on your time, you know, sort of every quarter or something. You know, like I would love to. I would pay big time. Like it's just, this is so invaluable. I just have to say. And I didn't realize you're out in Calgary. So fellow Canadian, yay.
Hey, where are
So
you, Sue?
I'm in
Of course.
Halifax.
What hell?
I've got
Ottawa.
family.
Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa, that's right. Maureen?
Kamloops, which is about 3 hours north of Vancouver.
Oh, yeah.
Cool, excellent. And Claire?
You have to unmute, Claire. You're still muted. It's the little microphone on the left-hand corner.
There we go. I thought I'd been muted. No, I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So you're
And-
Texas is the sister to Calgary.
And the shirt looks great, Claire, the Beekeeper shirt.
Yeah, I got my big shirt on.
Yes.
Oh, Sue too. Awesome.
Gina, where are you from?
Who?
Andrea.
Andrea.
I also in Calgary.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
This is unusual. So many Canadians.
Awesome. Well, now we know we are all just, you know, we're here for the same things. We're here to grow and to grow our drumming and to grow our love for music. And I just love it. And I would love if you guys if you want to take one of the exercises through the week and bring it to us and play for us. Like show us what of these exercises that you've worked on. You don't have to, Claire, if you don't want to. It's okay. But because I know it's very personal. But remember, what we're bringing to the table is not ourselves. It's a snapshot of where we are in time right now. And that can change, right? Like right now, this is where we are. In 6 weeks' time, that could be different. In a year's time, that can be different. In 10 years' time, that can be different. So remembering it's just a snapshot of where you are right now. So there's no judgment because we're all here. We all start somewhere and we all have something to work on. So we'll see you all next week. I'm so excited.
See you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Fantastic.
session.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sue.
Awesome. Take care, Maureen and Claire. Thanks.
Bye, Maureen.
bye.